Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Social Housing Roundtable. Lovely to have you all with us. This is episode 202 as we move into our third century of events. So huge thank you to everyone who can join us and who's here today. My name's Matt Baird. I've been running this platform, this community now for the last kind of 5 years. Started during COVID with 2 or 3 of us just having a chat about some of the struggles we were facing, and we've now grown into this incredible community of more than 4,000 people and more joining in all the time. So huge thank you to everyone who's signed up, joined us. We've had more than 1,700 people attend events this year, which is quite frankly wild. And that doesn't include everyone who follows up on all of the various methods online via YouTube, Spotify, and those kind of areas, because all of our sessions are recorded. So if you're ever looking to get, you miss a session and you want to kind of have a back look through the back catalogue, please feel free to. They are all online. Day to day, I work in recruitment. So that's what I've done for 15 years. I've tried to kind of help, hopefully, hire people with the same values that I think need to be in the social housing space, that blend of social heart, commercial mind that is so often requested. And it's those funds that keep this running for free. So if you have used me for recruitment, a massive thank you. But there's always kind of more business required. So if you are looking for recruitment support, please reach out. But also a huge thank you to our sponsors. So this session is sponsored by Tentacles, and we'll go on to those very shortly with Claire and Steve very shortly. But also annually we're sponsored by Alertical and CMSG through 2025. So huge thanks to them both. Day to day, I'm also chair of the board for a local small housing provider, which is why the news of the TSMs coming out this morning is so amazing. But also why we wanted to bring one of the topics to the table today, and to those who've been on a session with Claire before, we've touched on some of the areas a couple of years ago, maybe, or a year and a half, maybe it was, that we last kind of embraced some of these, but methods are always developing, ideas are always developing, and also the experience of working with tenants nationally is so there's lots and lots of insight to be shared today. And for those who are, those smaller providers in particular who are looking for new and innovative ways to engage with tenants and work with tenants in a way that really truly kind of adds value rather than simply as a tick box exercise, I'm certain you're going to get plenty out of today. So I'm going to pass across to both Claire and Steve, who'll do their introductions. Then we've got a bit of a presentation. If you are new to the format, as some people are already doing, please feel free to make introductions in the chat. Claire and Steve will introduce today's topic, share their thoughts and ideas, and then we'll move into a more open forum discussion. But if there are ideas or thoughts you want to share during their presentation, please put them in the chat box and I'll make sure you get. But without further ado, Claire, I'll pass over to you to kick off today, and a huge welcome and thank you from the roundtable.
Thank you, and thank you for having me again. I think it's exactly a year actually since I was last here. So my name's Claire Blacka. I work partly for Tentacles, which is all about working with organisations to make sure engagement does as it should do. So I work very closely with tenants and residents as well as the organisation. But the other part of what I do is Game of Homes, which is what I'm here to talk about today. And Steve, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, good morning everyone. My name's Steve Dungworth and I am owner and founder of Golden Marzipan, essentially a digital and change advisory service. And it's great to be here and great to be working with Claire on Game of Homes.
Okay, so are you able to put the slides up?
Yeah, sure.
Lovely. So we've got some slides just so that you don't have to look at our faces the entire time. So we're here to talk about something called serious fun and the role of gamification in resident engagement. So if we can go to the next slide, we've already introduced ourselves a bit, but Steve and I met through a series of sort of networking events. And Steve had the idea of having a game where we could look at resident engagement.
I think we've lost these slides. Sorry, Steve, the slide has gone off.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We tested it, didn't we? Oh,
we did test it and it worked, and now it's all gone wrong.
Yeah.
But bear with us. Yeah, so So as I say, Steve had the idea of having a game and had a chat with me about it, and we ended up developing some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. But I think it's really important that you understand what our shared goals are, because it's not just fun for fun's sake. So we wanted genuine opportunities for residents and for front-facing colleagues as well to get involved and make an impact. And we wanted to do it in a positive, inspiring way. So I think it's really important if we're going to invite residents to be involved, that we at least show them a good time while we're doing it and not just ask you to sit there in quite a boring space being miserable. We wanted to keep things open and transparent so residents can see exactly what's going on and hold us to account for it afterwards. And we wanted to make room for bold ideas. So we didn't want you to be in a space where there was that kind of computer says no, kind of, well, this is what we've always done approach. We wanted you to be able to have bold ideas, fresh thinking, be innovative. And we wanted to do something that's memorable so that when you get to the end of an exercise, you're really clear about what you've done, and you can sort of recall that to your mind really easily. So if we could go on to the next slide. So the easiest way to sort of tell you about this is about the approach that we've taken, and then we're going to tell you some of the science behind it that can be applied more widely. So we've got Game of Homes. And Game of Homes is an empowering and dynamic workshop that we do over a day, and we have between 6 and 20 people. And one of the rules is that at least 50% of those people should be residents or tenants if it's an issue related to them. And the idea is that we have a facilitated and structured day where we explore lots of ideas. The power is shared across the group. So, you know, we've had the CEO there for some of our sessions, for example. But that person has had no more power than a resident or a maintenance operative. We all work together to think about what our ideas are and what the priorities are. And we do that through a range of different exercises that are fun, that you do score points for, and you know there is a winner at the end of the game. And we have things like a spinning wheel, and we have card games and lots of things within it. But the idea of it is that eventually we'll come up with 3 solid ideas that we will then take forward, and they will result in an action plan. The pictures there are demonstrations of huge big cardboard cutouts that we've got that we bring into the room. So it's a really visual and sensory experience as well. And we've had really good feedback on it. People have really enjoyed the day. And I think one of the pieces of feedback has been the value of all working together in a shared power group that has really worked. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. So just to be a bit clearer, here are some of the benefits of gamification. So the first one is inclusion. So everybody's working together, regardless of their role in an organisation, be that tenant or colleague. But what we've also found is that it works really well for people with different needs. So everybody gets to have a say. So it doesn't matter if you're a really quiet person or you're the loudest person in the room, you get equal chance to have a say through our exercises. And because we change activities quite a lot, we've had feedback from people with neurodiverse conditions that have said that it's really kept their attention throughout the day. They found it much easier to do because there are a range of activities. And obviously everybody's familiar with some sort of gameplay. So everybody feels like they can do it and pitch in. It's a really sensory experience as well. So as I say, the cardboard cutouts are very big. We have some squeakers there that you can see in the front of the picture that we use those to score points. And I mentioned some of the other equipment that we have. And I think that sort of enhances the memory of it, which means that you are more likely to remember what you agreed and be able to chase that up and follow that up. And it just sticks in people's minds, and it feels, you know, it's colourful, it's bright, it feels happy. we think that, gamification generally is an opportunity to learn new things. One of the best pieces of feedback I had was from Horton Housing, who we worked with, who are a specialist provider for people with support needs. And one of the guys that did it there said that he didn't even realize he had good ideas, but actually won the competition. So really learn about how to sort of formulate his ideas and get them forward. It's positive and strengths based. So we are acknowledging what's gone wrong, what could be improved, but we're looking to the future and how we can build on the strengths that we've got to make things better, rather than getting caught up in everything that's ever gone wrong and not really moving forward. So it makes people feel good as well. It makes people feel like we're moving forward. And it's true collaboration. Everybody has to work together. And I know I've said it a few times, but I can't emphasize the point enough that power is shared. So that makes it really work as well. Okay, if we could go on to the next slide, please. So there might be some people in the room, and we have had some feedback that there are some concerns about gamification. So we thought we'd address them head on. So the first one is that gamification is childish and patronizing. And I think it's really important that we call that out straight away. So a lot of sectors are using gamification, and the idea is not about patronizing people or treating them childishly. It's about engaging people in a different way. So the outcomes are very serious and very meaningful. And we will talk to you today about why the techniques work, but it's about using your brain in a different way and being more creative. And also, as I said, just showing people a good time. It makes things more memorable and you get more buy-in as a result of that. The second myth is that gamification is just adding points and badges, but that's not what it's about. It's about psychology, not prizes. And Steve is going to explain some of that science in a minute. The idea that it's a quick fix. So gamification can speed things up a bit because it's structured, you kind of working towards a set goal, but it's not a quick fix. It needs to be carefully designed and it needs to be purposeful. And you probably need to come back to it at a later date as well. Some people think that it might distract from serious goals, but actually it can really reinforce them. So it frames progress in a certain way and gives feedback in engaging ways that helps people stay focused on the goals that otherwise might feel quite dull, and you might get sort of bored or it might feel daunting. It sort of helps focus the mind. And the other thing that we need to acknowledge is that it doesn't work in every situation. So we know that there are a lot of really emotive issues in housing, and gamification can be helpful in sort of overcoming some of that conflict. But if emotions are running really high, sort of suggesting to somebody that we play a game to solve the issue is not going to help the situation. So it needs to be used with caution and thought. Okay, I will pass over to Steve now.
Thank you, Claire. The word game here is doing quite a lot of heavy lifting. So I'd just like you to think for 20, 30 seconds about some of the games that you play. There might be a card game. What's your favorite card game? Maybe it's around the board game, around the Christmas or with family, or you're into chess or backgammon and you think of strategies. Maybe you're even thinking of casino games. So just have a think for 20 or 30 seconds about games that you enjoy, games that stimulate yourself, and just put a couple in the chat. I'd be interested to know at the end about what sort of games people are interested in. Now, I want to talk, whilst you're thinking about that, about the science behind this, gamification, which is built on psychology. Now, I first came across the Helsinki participation game, which is, as it says on the tin, was created by the local authority in Helsinki. It's used in everyday operations for user-based, customer-centric city. Since 1995, the city has prescription that their citizens be involved in decisions and change. So this is one of the ways that they are doing that, but it's not the only way. There's lots of digital stuff going on, e-participation. It's quite a big thing in Helsinki to involve and engage with the citizens to help the city develop its services. And those of you that know me know that I work in data and digital and technology. And actually, my first thought was we could use this to help with designing technology, design thinking, help overcome some of those user problems that you have on a day-to-day basis with technology. But as I started to talk with Claire about this, it quickly became apparent that we could use this for lots of different ways. And I'll talk about some of the use cases shortly. If you think about the games that you're thinking about at the moment, then think about the elements of those games. You know, you've got rules. Sometimes Dad doesn't always remember the rules of Monopoly and things like that. You know, you always have to remind them that we're playing this version and not that version of a card game. So, you know, the rules are quite important. And one of the rules that we have is that everybody is equal in the workshop. And we have to remind people sometimes that, you know, just because they're in a position of authority, that doesn't mean that they have the trump card to play on this. We've got cards that we use, and cards help you to come up with new ideas, think of things in different ways, their prompts, their ideas, their challenges. And we have tokens, either rewards or points or things like that, that give you a sense of recognition and reward as you play the game. So that's all part of the reason why we love games in our daily lives, and part of the reason why why Game of Homes and this sort of design thinking is working. On autonomy and safety, the environment's different. So if you think about this environment and compare it perhaps with a traditional formal meeting with a chair and points of order, it can feel quite intimidating. Whereas in an environment where you've been given permission to be creative, perhaps bringing back memories from your childhood and creativity, that gives you some extra feeling of wanting to be involved and be part of the decision making and generating solutions. As Claire said, as we learn new things with every game we play, and for it's used in part as it's used in training in day-to-day basis, and in the corporate world, that's no different. It's just adding another layer of training for you to test, to pilot, and to fail fast. And lastly, it is human design thinking. We get those feelings of collaboration, of innovation, of being different, of being part of something that is perhaps innovative, and therefore the gamification element and the soft behavioral skills start to come through. As I said at the start, there's lots of use cases. So the ones that we've used, or Claire has used in tenant engagement, has been around general policy development, scrutiny and deep diving into different topics, complaints management, and general, how do we think about tenant engagement in a different way? For design thinking, then we can come up with new innovation and improvement initiatives. It can be used for team development, particularly where you've got some us and them issues in your organisation. It helps to break down the barriers between teams. And we've also seen it used in strategy development for thought leadership and for leaders. So lots to think about there. I want to get rid of the PowerPoint now and open up the debate for any questions, any observations, but perhaps with the thinking of how gamification and some of the related innovations can help improve the conversation, the dynamic, and the outcomes.
Thank you very, very much indeed, Steve and Claire. I can see a number of things already kind of being raised in the chat, which is great to see. And a lot of people talking about various games and things on those lines as well, which is always good. You know, John has said there that improving meaningful engagement, delivering positive outcomes while allowing participants to have a little fun and enjoy the processes should be welcomed and valued. James has said games teach you the rules of living in society and family feel like happy families, the school playground. Ben has said the game of life was my favorite. Alicia said, I've said for a long time that Sims games could be adapted to reflect tenant priorities. I'd love a game where we're given a certain amount of money to spend on a social housing estate and build that way. And Claire's just shared in the chat there some of her work in terms of what's going on with Game of Homes. There was a point they were made by John earlier that I want to kind of just bring in to kick off the conversation, which was feedback is crucial. Organisations must show how important tenant engagement has been and will continue to improve services and be valued. And I think this is one of the big things for both yourselves and Claire, Steve, when I've spoken to you before, is that this isn't a go in, do a bit of work, oh, wasn't that lovely, and leave. It's that there's a commitment or an expression from yourselves before you even start that there should be a commitment from the landlord to actually then do something with the information and the ideas that come out of it, isn't there? Alert Call return as one of the keynote sponsors for the Social Housing Roundtable in 2025 into 2026, and we're delighted to have them back. Alert Call help as many people as possible feel safe, connected and informed by combining ingenious technology and award-winning human contact. As you can see from this touchscreen I've got with me, Alertical's digital engagement solution helps social landlords proactively know their customers and properties by putting a portable touchscreen in every home, offering a daily property check through the optional OK Each Day service, plus repairs reporting, tenant surveys and much more. They also provide Beyond Warden Call, an easier, simpler and lower cost wireless warden call solution with video door entry, dispersed telecare and smoke alarms. Alertical work with over 60 housing providers across the UK to enhance two-way engagement between customers and their landlords. In 2022, Alertical won the Queen's Award for Enterprise and Innovation, and in 2023, Alertical won Housing Supplier of the Year. We're delighted to have them back with us throughout the course of this year, and please do go check them out on social media and LinkedIn to find out more. Thank you very much, Alertical, for sponsoring us again.
Yeah, there is. So one of the parts of the session is about feedback, and we make an agreement about what will happen to the action plan once it's completed. So the group agree how long the organisation has to consider the action plan, because they obviously need to kind of fill in the details, how long it will take, and and raise any issues. If they go back and they might have to adapt some things based on budget or something that we've not realised in the group. But it needs to be full business-led feedback. And most of the groups have agreed to sort of track the actions over a longer period of time, rather than just a one-off feedback. So that often goes through sort of residents groups, or I think one organisation set up a special committee for it. So there's lots of different approaches to it, and it can be tailored to the organisation, but there needs to be a closing of the feedback loop.
Just to dive in, Claire, on some of the workshop details. So we look to generate lots of ideas for different problems or different pain points, and again get the group to democratically decide which three they particularly want to take forward, and then we spend quite a bit of time on each of those three potential solutions. And I know you spend a lot of time after the meeting curating that information into a report that then goes back to the organisers or to the leadership team.
Yeah, and the group always check that to make sure that their ideas have been accurately reflected. I think the other thing about this approach is just looking in the whites of people's eyes, really. So you know, you've worked with a group of people together to come up with these ideas. To just kind of forget about them or dismiss them feels a lot more difficult because you've spent that quality time with people and looked them in the face. So
I think that's a huge part that's being missed, isn't it? Particularly around hybrid working and remote working and that kind of stuff. Is that actual human interaction? And I was going to ask, you know, for yourselves, I know the method is gamification, but that isn't almost the outcome. You know, the outcome is how do we get people conversing and engaging in a way that sometimes is challenging or sometimes can be difficult on topics that sometimes can feel a bit dry or whatever they might look like. And do you find that actually there are people who've come to you afterwards and said if it wasn't for the methods being used, we never would have reached the answers that we reach today?
oh, definitely. And I think the feedback is that everybody goes away understanding things a little bit more. So we're very keen on getting front-facing staff there. So, for example, I worked with Alliance Homes in Portishead, and they particularly wanted to look at their communication around repairs. And we had a couple of operatives from the maintenance team there and somebody from the customer contact centre. And their discussions with each other about the challenges of things meant that they came up with completely different solutions because they had a much better understanding of each other's side of the story rather than sort of a customer group saying, well, we need to do this and not understanding the challenges of the operative and vice versa. So I think the solutions have been really good, and I think the feedback has really reflected that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Keith, I'll bring you in.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. All right, Steve, nice to see you again.
Oh, nice to see you too, Keith. How are you?
Not so bad, sir. Not so bad at all. So I'm working with a local authority these days. Have you done any work with where you've engaged members in the process as well within the gamification? Because whilst we do engage with our residents, and I'm intrigued by this as an approach to improve that engagement because it's thinnish at the moment for a variety of reasons. But one of the things I'm looking to do is actually to, if you like, raise the awareness amongst our members of the importance of residents being engaged in the process. Because of course they have a statutory responsibility to scrutinise on the way through, take loads of stuff into scrutiny. But I want to build the connections between the resident scrutinising and process development with the members. So have you done any with councillors as well in local authorities at all? Where it's good examples?
We did do one with a local authority, and the councillor was invited but didn't come. I think they got called away at the last minute. But we have done sessions with sort of CEOs, board members, other representatives of a similar nature, and councillors would be very welcome, and it works for everyone really. So I think it would be great to get councillors involved. I think that there's just the challenges of their diaries, isn't there?
Well, yeah, there are ways of encouraging them to attend, shall we say?
Yeah. In theory, there is no reason why this type of activity can't be done by anybody at any level in the organisation or any stakeholder. The issue for me is about collaboration and innovation. Those are the two words that Claire and I are constantly using about true collaboration and true innovation. We can say we are collaborating, but this is a real example of how it works on the ground, I think. So yes, Keith,
I think it ties in, doesn't it, to that actual, and I guess ties into Keith's point, that willingness to get involved, because actually it's so easy for people to say, nah, someone else can do it. And actually therein lies so much of the problem that comes through. And Keith, I imagine that's some of the challenges you're seeing as well.
It is very much. I mean, it's like within the district I'm at, we've got quite a weird diversity of rural and urban, with therefore very different things that are facing our residents. And they're coming at it from different angles, which is fine. But it does mean that actually if we bring together an overarching group, they don't always have a lot of commonality, whereas our members, of course, do, because they're representing the whole district. So my vision is bringing together a group of residents with a group of members and actually doing it as a combined thing, because at the moment the members are not necessarily taking on board the views that are reaching them through different routes. So I think rather than sort of taking them as separate groups and working with them, I think working with them together, so harping on the collaboration, is the key thing for me, and with the innovation coming out of that.
That it's worked really well when we've done it with residents and boards for the similar reasons, really, that people are saying, maybe the boards are a little bit out of touch with residents and tenants. And I'll be totally honest with you, some of the board members have been a little bit reticent about doing it, and have sort of come into the room looking very cautious and nervous, but have left the room going, yes, this was really good, I get it now. So
that's what we need.
Yeah, so there are sometimes some challenges. So I always, when we're doing Game of Homes, I write to people, invite them, and I say you don't need to do anything apart from bring an open mind, because the idea does make some people nervous, and it's difficult to overcome. But interestingly, it's usually the colleagues that are nervous, not the tenants and residents, who are much more open to ideas.
And in that spirit of openness, then, Sue Phillips, it's potential role for shared ownership as well. So anybody.
I'm going to come on to shared ownership in a minute, because there's a few things I want to raise. I'm definitely going to circle back. I'm going to go to John first, just because I know he had his hand raised, and I'm going to come on to the shared ownership. Then I'm going to Enna, and then I'm going to Alicia, just so people know that I've got them and I'm looking. But,
Okay.
John, let me bring you in first.
Just picking up on that last point, thank you very much indeed, Claire and Steve, for your presentation. Picking up on the last point regarding governance and board members, I think all boards are now having to look very closely at the governance issues, and that is very much welcome. They are here to deliver services, and it's about what can benefit the tenants via the services that they're doing, and I think that is getting lost at the moment. Looking at the wider issue, I think organisations need to be brave. And I think there is a real reluctance upon engagement staff. We've always done it this way. This has delivered our results. Yeah, but without change, you'll get the same results. Repeating the same exercise time after time after time will only bring the same results. We come across ticking boxes, we come across surveys. Yes, they're powerful tools as to looking at the services that you deliver. Does it improve engagement? No, it doesn't. But yet we find organisations that are saying, oh, we've sent out 1,500 surveys this week, we've got 300 responses. That's improved our engagement. Has it really? It's getting down to as you explained, getting down and looking in the whites of one another's eyes and saying, this is an emotional process for me. I'm a human being. I'm a tenant. I live in these properties. What are you going to do to improve my lifestyle? And taking up that challenge is going to be very difficult, but it's something that the regulator and everybody now is trying to get a grip on. So I'm just looking towards the future and saying, please, 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 come along. I have promoted you, as you may well know.
I know, John, I'm very grateful.
So far, there's been a reluctance, but I will keep pushing.
Thank you, John.
No
I
problem.
totally agree. If I could ban one phrase from the workplace, it would be, but this is how we've always done things.
And can I say thank you as well, John? I am a board member, and indeed this evening I'll be chairing the Customer Experience Committee. And so, you've got at least one board member who is embracing a different approach, and I always welcome tenants to the Customer Experience Committee.
I really appreciate your input there. Thank you very, very much, John. So just before I bring in Enna, there was a point which David just alluded to there that was regarding shared owners. As I said, TSMs came out this morning. Results are very, very low. Let's not get away from that. On some areas, the proportion of respondents who report they're satisfied that the landlord listens to tenant views and acts upon them in general social housing is at 61.6%, but when you drop that to shared ownership, it's 38.4%. That's poor. Let's not change anything other than that's poor. And I do find it sometimes, we were talking before about this being a challenge, that is saying that this is all landlords over 1,000 units, as if all of those landlords are the same, because there's a huge difference between those who are on 1,000 to 2,000 units compared to 60, 70, 80, 100,000 units. But there's still that kind of mindset of going, well, actually, are we doing enough to truly listen to views and act upon them? That the stats are telling us no. Why, and to Sue's point there, is gamification aimed primarily at social rent tenants, or is there an existing or role in relation to shared owners and maybe some of the challenges we're facing in that space as well?
I think it's for anybody. So our original intention of Game of Homes was to work with residents, so across any tenure, including shared ownership. We've since realised that actually it works for any group of people, regardless of what situation they're in. So I can't think of a single example, because I think residents should be involved in everything. But if there were sort of a design process that you wanted to do as colleagues, I think that gamification works there. I absolutely think it works for shared owners, but I also recognise that shared owners are in a very difficult, very challenging position, and I think that we would need to have a very careful approach to that, because I wouldn't want shared owners to think that gamification was trivialising their issues. So as we've explained throughout the presentation, I don't think gamification does do that, but I think because they're quite rightly a very unhappy group of people, to kind of wade in unthinkingly could sort of have the opposite effect. So I think it needs some care, but it could absolutely work. And I think it would be good for shared owners to work in partnership with colleagues in that way, rather than the current relationships that I see between shared owners and landlords at the moment.
Good point.
Yeah, go on, Steve. Anything you would add?
No, I don't think so. In theory, the workshop can work for anybody and everybody. It's a problem-focused workshop that moves it through to potential solutions. So we're not focusing on individuals or people or teams. Quite the opposite. We're focusing on what the issue and the problem is and how we can overcome it, and the process and how we use gamification takes some of the heat out of that conversation. But everybody needs to enter that room with the respect of each other to want to resolve the problem rather than to continue the argument.
And I think from what I see on the stats, there's such a disconnect there between satisfaction and what's going on. It's sometimes about going, right, well, how do we just get in the room and leave those egos, but also leave the kind of, the hostility at the door, which is difficult to do. Let's not get away from the fact that there's some justifiable hostility there, and leave that hostility at the door and go, actually, for the next 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever it might take, we're going to try and move past some of this. And it might be that at the end of it, we haven't got, but for now, we're going to truly listen to each other. And that's hard.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be, but it is.
I'm going to bring in. That's getting harder in society, isn't it? That's our problem.
And this is exactly one of the things I always say on here is, if you disagree, brilliant. Let's truly hear all sides of it. And I'm really grateful for Sue bringing that point in and going, there's another side to this part. And lovely to have you with us. I'm going to bring you in.
Hi everyone. Thank you very much, Claire and Steve. So what I'm doing is I'm moving into the social sector. I've just been made redundant, and I used to work for a property firm, and I have looked after customer experience programs in the past, and where a workshop like this would sit nicely is in a program of different initiatives. Where I'm going with this is on the initiatives that would happen prior to a gamification workshop that would address some of the challenges that have been brought up, such as the culture change, focus on the tenant, engaging employees before going into a workshop, or the disconnect of the board when it comes to the realities of a tenant. What kind of initiatives do you think, maybe top 3 from Claire and Steve, do you think need to be or could be put in place prior to a workshop like this happening?
Do you want me to have a go at that, Claire?
Yes, please.
So I think you need to do a little bit of strategy thinking outside of the room before we start, and start to think about how you would tackle each of the different issues. So one of the things that I do in my day job, as it were, on data, digital and technology, is people get into an awful mess with priorities for projects and new systems and things like that. So we play a game around project priorities. So there's all sorts of different ways you can tackle this. The diagnosis that goes in at the start is critical. And if we are talking about culture and team development, then we might use some different tools for doing that rather than Game of Homes. But if we're talking about, and I go back to my words, collaboration, innovation, team working, breaking down barriers, working together, then we would use Game of Homes.
Thank you very much.
Does that answer your question, Anna?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Thank you.
We don't just dive into, oh, let's have a Game of Homes. We do some planning and diagnosis before we start.
Yeah, and we've just had we're just working with somebody at the moment actually who came to us wanting to play a Game of Homes, but when they explained what they wanted, it didn't quite fit. So actually we've come up with another version to kind of, so it's not just about throwing Game of Homes at it, because it's about thinking about what fits. So we have a lot of conversations with people beforehand to think about what they want to get out of it.
Yeah, I think that's really useful. I think the gamification approach could be used across different, like we've said, with different groups, so segmenting employees or different tenant types, and then using the approach to try and address some of the challenges. So thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Alicia, I'll bring you in. Case Management Solution Group, or CMSG, are the home of React, the UK's #1 case management system for ASB and community safety. We are delighted to have them as one of our key sponsors for Social Housing Roundtable 2025 into 2026. And with the ASB app now fully integrated to the platform, it allows residents to record, monitor and report issues directly to their case office in live time. What's not to love? CMSG are bringing simplicity back to case management, and I cannot recommend them enough and thank them for all of their support through this period and through the rest of the year. Thank you, CMSG, and do please go check them out on social media and on LinkedIn. Thank you.
I just feel like I've fallen into heaven. I really do. Thanks, Matt. I didn't actually realise this was going on. This is something I've been going on about for a long time. So I used to work in education with youngsters with emotional, behavioural and social issues who were totally switched off from education, sitting with a book. And I used to spend hours making board games for them based on their interests. And they learned that way. They learned and they achieved good qualifications, a lot of them. I think we totally underestimate the value in graphics and illustrations over language, which can stigmatize. And there is ambiguity. There is no ambiguity when you look at a picture of a house. And I love the pictures you use. I'm always looking on iStock for pictures like that. They're beautiful. It totally takes it out of it. It takes out the need to have, look at different groups. As I say, the youngsters I worked with, some of them did struggle. They had various learning difficulties, which this just cuts across it. And I know we've got Megan Duggan from TPAS. I noticed she's on the line. She's in the meeting today, and she actually had showed us some illustrations that had come from TPAS meetings that people have drawn. And I think even using those, finding a way where we can use these illustrations rather than using pages and pages of words. And what I can't understand how it kind of does my head in, really, that we say we're not engaging the younger people in social housing. those younger people in social housing are the ones that I sat in the classroom with them. In maths, if it was a difficult concept, put the books away. We used to have the games, the voting games, where they would vote. They would each give their ABC answer, and there would be a reward for someone at the end of the session. Havebury Housing, we vote. The tenants only vote for where the money goes from for the funding, community funding. Even a basic vote is a heck of a lot more interesting than actually having to sit through hundreds of pages. Yes, it takes people like you to set it up in advance so that we need your skills to actually point us in the right direction. But why aren't we doing this more? As I say, Matt knows my views on IT and everything else. I just don't understand. And now that I know more about this, and I actually know that there are people working in this, because as I say, I come from education, and it totally mystifies me why we're not using it in housing. So thank you. It's lovely for me.
No, thank you. I always read your stuff, so I feel a bit fangirled that you like what we're doing.
Oh, wonderful.
And we're not stopping with that either. So we're just about to complete a little game which helps prioritize what groups are going to scrutinize, so that when you choose a subject, you've done it in a fair and proportional way. So we've got a little game for that, and then we're just starting to develop a game to review actions as well. So to make sure that everybody is satisfied from different viewpoints that an action has been completed and that it's working. So yeah, we're looking for more and more ideas and different ways of doing things, rather than just sort of writing things, ticking boxes, filling out charts. So. Thank you very much. I'm happy to chat, Alicia.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. And please, everybody, sign up to our newsletter on the Gamer Homes website, and we'll keep you in touch with what we're doing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Brian, I'll bring you in.
I do like the idea of the games, and I think it has a role to play, particularly where you've got a group of people together and you want to look at something which is going on within an organization, whatever. I think, and it frustrates me. I've been at 2 meetings recently, and with organizations that have over 500 staff, and I keep getting this comment of, well, the engagement team is only 4 people. Where are the 496 people? What's their role in engagement?
Yeah. Absolutely,
and where is the structure that needs to be in place to pick up the feedback? Every member of staff is an engagement member, and organizations just seem to completely forget that. They will look at putting insight and engagement strategies in place, but they don't put any emphasis or any ideas together of how can the person who's doing your gas safety check feed back information that the tenants are giving them. It's only when tenants feel that they're actually being listened to that will encourage tenants to get involved in things. And that's when you can get a group of people together and say, there's an issue on repairs. Let's look at using a game to put something together. But where you've got organizations who are saying, oh, well, that's the engagement team. It's 3 or 4 or 5 people, but you're missing the 996 other people who work for the organization and dismissing anything that they give you, because you've not put a structure in place.
I agree, Brian. So I work as my other role in Tentacles. I work with organisations to improve engagement, and one of the things that I say to every organisation that I work with is that engagement should be like health and safety. So when you work somewhere, one of the first things that you're asked to do is read the health and safety policy. And right at the top of the policy, it says that health and safety is everybody's responsibility. So you still have a specialist person, you still have a health and safety manager or health and safety lead, and they're the expert that you go to if you need a bit of extra knowledge or a bit of specialism. But you are still responsible for health and safety. You're still vigilant all the time. And that's the same as engagement. So you still have your specialist people, you still have people who are skilled in engagement and techniques like gamification, but everybody should be vigilant, looking out for it all the time, looking out for opportunities. But I think there's a long way to go before we're like that. And I mean, obviously, I love engagement teams and engagement workers, but I think there is the real danger that as soon as you have that team, the rest of the organisation can go, well, that's their responsibility and I don't have to worry about it. And I think we need to do a lot of work to change that perspective.
And you can see from the chat there that Emma said engagement is everyone's role, not just a team. My organisation at our request has tenant actually have it in the job roles for all positions, which is great to hear. But Janina said, coming from a small engagement team, I hear you, Brian. The challenge is real internally, but thankfully some of us are making progress. It's not for want of trying. Please keep pushing this with your landlord, as I guarantee the landlord's engagement team will be appreciating it. And Enna said it needs to be brought back to the culture, placing the tenant at the centre and ensuring that employees are given the tools and support they need to deliver. Aligned to this are the performance measures for each employee, where tenant satisfaction is part of this and employees are engaged and accountable. Ben has mentioned a different question, which I'll come back to in a minute, because I'm just going to bring in Stuart very quickly here, because I'm where we're going in the last few minutes. So Stuart, over to you.
Thank you very much. This is an awesome presentation. I've been in the social housing sector for about 20 years, doing thermal imaging of thousands of houses. I've been trying to deploy millions of pounds to do retrofits. I've sat in dozens and dozens of meetings with design teams and clients and contractors and subcontractors, all talking about retrofit, and not one tenant has ever been engaged in that process. Because retrofit's designed and then crammed down people's throats whether they want it or not. And I could tell you hundreds of examples of retrofit projects going horribly wrong because tenants were never engaged. I think it's a really good market for you guys to talk to retrofit teams and say, let's fill a room full of all these houses you'd like to retrofit, and get that process gamified so that people are bought into it and they truly understand it, rather than just have a bunch of contractors show up one day and say, get out, we're doing this, this and this. I'm a big fan, and that's the world we're in. We're digitizing that. But I don't want to hijack your call and bore everyone about it, so
it's really important to see, and you can see from the John has said that tenant engagement is not something that's placed entirely into the engagement team. It also places engagement into a silo that can be sidelined by staff, and it ties into that point you're making. Absolutely. Jim, I'm going to come to you, and where we've got about 2 minutes left, so I'll go to you.
Hi Matt, it's only a quick one, just to say to the guy who's just on, my housing association, we do engage right at the very beginning. We help to choose the partners and everything. I'm on the LOC, Landlord Operations Committee, so I see everything with the retrofits, kitchens or anything. If there's any planning goes on, we're all involved in that and have been for a long time now.
Brilliant to hear. And this is, I think, it shows the diversity of what's going on in the housing space, because someone's just put into and I'm not going to mention just for the sake of the recording, but there appears to not only be zero autonomy for residents whose homes have been planned for retrofit. We are rarely informed despite long-term plans and the knowledge of these plans. And it's that kind of blend between both, which is where we are at the moment. It goes back to Enna's point earlier regarding culture and where we are. About someone who just wrote to me kind of on the side of this said, is always thinking about that retention and engagement and going, well, actually, we have tenants in our homes. One of the most difficult parts to do in housing sometimes is to fill void properties.
We have liaison officers.
Sorry?
We have liaison officers who come to you when they're going to do retrofit. They follow you all the way right through from the retrofit from beginning to the finish and inform you of what's happening.
Really glad to hear it. That's absolutely superb. Ben has just put in the chat. So Michael had said engagement is every contact between tenant and landlord. And I know, Claire, that's something you and Steve have both banged on about for so long. But I think we're finally starting to turn that wheel a bit. And Ben has asked there, is Game of Home something a software supplier could support to help with onboarding new systems and getting valuable feedback from resident groups and helping the landlord measure success? I think part of the and I know you mentioned earlier maybe around an app or something that you're potentially looking at, Claire, but I think so much of this is actually the power of Game of Homes is the in-person part that you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's about being in rooms with people, having proper discussions, which I don't think happens as well over a digital medium. But I think Steve's better placed to answer Ben's question than I am.
So I definitely have plans for some sort of app in the future, but the beauty of this is that you can have Claire and myself, who are at opposite ends of the scale when it comes to using digital technology or services. We can collaborate together on coming up with solutions that suit everybody. As I said at the start, when I saw Helsinki participation game, I thought this would be good for technology development, but actually it's good for lots of other things.
Absolutely superb. Well, look, we've got about 2 minutes left. I kind of want to bring today to a close before we this could run and run and run. And I think that's very, very clear from everything we've seen today. And I'm getting all kind of questions sent through over here as well and stuff as well. So it's been absolutely brilliant. And as John has just said in the chat there that, good discussion, ears in, brain in full engagement mode. I think for my aim with every roundtable is to get the discussion flowing. And it's done that very, very naturally today. So I really appreciate it. Next week, when we come onto the roundtable, we've got 13 group. No, sorry, that's a couple of weeks away. I'm talking absolute rubbish. Next week, we have Sangaban coming on to talk about how we can build better homes faster. And that's going to be an interesting conversation in and of itself as well. But I want to make sure we're leaving today on a positive and on a kind of what's the next step. So Claire, rather than going, hey, book us in, let's go. What's that mindset shift that you think needs to change and start now? What would be that thing you'd implore landlords to just think about more broadly now if we're going to get to where we need to be?
Well, I think the first thing is there's no point in just constantly going over the past. It doesn't change anything. So I think the first thing is to think about how you're going to be future focused. And the second thing is that most of the tenants and residents are giving their time for free or for a very nominal amount of money. And we could have a whole other debate about what we think about that, but that's the fact as it is now. So how can you make sessions so that they're interesting, engaging and purposeful? And there are so many different ways of doing that. Game of Homes is just a single one. There are so many ways, and it just takes a little bit of thought and reflection to do that.
And Steve, anything you'd add?
I can't add to that. That's the perfect answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
But I think you're right, Matt. We could talk about this all day. So if anybody does ever want to have a chat, just get in touch with either me or Steve. We're very happy to chat.
What's the easiest way to get in touch with you both? I know it's gameof.homes is the website. What other is it?
There's a contact button on there. We're both on LinkedIn, and we'll pop our email addresses in the chat as well.
Oh, fantastic. A huge thank you to you, not just for sponsoring today's session, but for coming on and engaging in a really, really powerful discussion. It's clear that housing just needs to think more about how any other private sector business does in terms of working with people and the people that it supports. And I'm reticent to use the word customers and upset anybody. I'm not calling you customers. I'm putting that out there now. But in terms of that mindset of customer delivery and customer mindset and what we're doing to truly engage, and how do you get people to listen in a different way and engage with people in a different way? And Claire and Steve have absolutely shown today that there's a huge way to do this if we can just get people to start changing that mindset. So massive thank you to them. Massive thank you to both Tentacles and Golden Marzipan. As I say, please reach out and have a look at some of the work they're doing on gameof.homes. And for now, I'll see you all next Tuesday at the next roundtable. Thank you both, and cheers for today.
Thanks you, Matt. Thanks, everyone.